Hey, welcome to your day off. My name is Corey, and of course, sitting with my best bud, Tony. What's up, Tone?
Hey, what's going on, brother?
You, man. Hey, so we first we have to thank Salon Centric. They brought us up to Lake Geneva this year so we could get a couple interviews.
Wisconsin, not Switzerland.
Yeah, that's right, Wisconsin. We didn't make it quite to Switzerland. Next year, though, maybe. Maybe they'll invite us up next year.
Right.
Hey,
hopefully they have one going over, over in Europe, and we'll definitely be there.
That'd be cool, wouldn't it?
Yep.
I think this one's every 2 years, right? Lake Geneva, Wisconsin.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. It's been an amazing show. Like some of our friends that work with Salon Centric, they warned us about how great the show is, and just being here. It's just everybody is so engaged, and everybody is really, really loving the live education that's going on.
Yeah, imagine like when you go to a big show and just shrink it and make it more intimate.
Yeah.
Right. And you can actually meet and greet and rub elbows with everybody.
Yeah.
Like last night at the Kugel Bar.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. At the event.
Right, at the event, and I'm a little disappointed because one of our guests got on stage and sang,
And we missed it.
We missed it.
Because we did the four corners and out thing.
Yeah, but everybody that presented was there. You know what I mean? So you had a chance to go there and actually meet and talk to everybody.
I mean, even at dinner last night, right? So at dinner last night, we're sitting at dinner, and who sits next to us but Justin Isaac, Sam Villa, and the one and only Hugo.
Yep. Who's coming on later?
Maybe.
Yeah,
That's
maybe.
pretty cool. I can't wait. But today we have, like you said, we have two guests that are sitting in with us at Lake Geneva, Wisconsin.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous about this because I think they're planning trying to flip the script.
Yeah, I think so. They want to ask us a bunch of questions, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, so
I'll go cower in fetal position in a corner someplace. I'm sure.
Or you and I could just continue to talk and let the time pass, and they have to go present.
I mean, although they're singing, although they're talking, we still have control over their mics, so we can just turn their mics off and just keep talking if we need to.
You want to?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, invite them in.
Let's invite them in. So, actually, this is the second time that both of them have been on the podcast. Today we have Miss Jen Planck and her best friend Lacey, and I think
best buds,
a couple best buds as well, right? I think Lacey's her last name because her first and middle name are best buds. So that's how Jen introduces her all the time. My best friend Lacey.
She has a lot of names: Best Bud, Landau,
Lacey, something Murray, something Griffith, something Junior. So for just a sec, we're gonna turn the mics over to them because they think that they've got it all under control. So we'll see how that goes. You ready?
Yep.
So Miss Jen Planck and Lacey, what's your name? Welcome,
Griffith.
Griffith. Welcome back to your day off.
Thank you so much, you guys. And so this is a really interesting situation here, and you guys have kind of become our friends. It's not
kind of
like it's kind of like a thing. We're like a thing now.
Like a long distance cousin,
it is
like a fifth cousin.
Yeah,
somewhere.
But what's really crazy is we met you guys at the beginning of this project.
Yeah,
at the very beginning.
Yeah, we were 5 months in. I think when we first met.
Yep, wow. And watching you guys blow up has been amazing. Like I knew it was going to happen the first time I talked to you, Corey. Like I knew the first time that I talked to you that you guys were going to be something that was going to revolutionize the hair industry. And the thing that we love the most about what you do is you keep things very, very real and relevant for your listeners. And I think what's unique about both of you is that you're both hairdressers. And so I think one of the things that Lacey and I respect the most about you is that not only do you walk the walk, but you bring other people in to talk a talk that changes people's lives. And watching you has been magic. And so today it's your turn.
It's our turn.
You have featured.
I'm scared.
You guys have listen.
After that setup.
You guys have featured so many iconic people in the industry that I don't know that you realize that you are both icons.
Stop it.
And
That's
so
ridiculous.
We're going to flip the script on you today. And this podcast is going to be all about you.
Yikes.
So let's get started, shall we?
Corey loves it. I'm like, yikes.
But before we get started, Jen, two things. One, are you going to let Lacey talk?
Yes.
Yes.
Maybe
okay, awesome.
a little bit.
She only will if she wants to.
Well, you better want to.
I want to.
But her dimples always talk for her. So even if she's not speaking, they'll be talking.
Dimples, hey.
They should have sound effects.
They should. Right. You need a dimple sound effect.
That's it.
Oh, that's the wrong one. Sorry.
Stop it.
And Jen, right back at you. I mean, I told you when we started this thing that I watched you on stage about a year or so before that, and to watch the way that it was the first time that I had heard, with the exception of Doug Cox, I'll give him that. With the exception of Doug Cox, it was the first time that I had ever heard real and relevant and we are people conversation. You know, it wasn't about the brands. It wasn't about that. It was about us. It was about the hairdresser. It was about those that do it every day. And I watched you do it, and I said, you didn't know that because I was hiding in the back. But when I watched you do it, I go, how can we impact the industry? And I knew that was the angle and that was the way. You know, there was enough brand talk, there's enough of that narrative, but how can we have real talk? So you're absolutely responsible for what we're doing, because through your inspiration of your impact on the industry, that motivate. You know what? It wasn't motivation, but it showed me the way. It showed me that this conversation is relevant, that this conversation is real, and that
we even had that conversation this morning.
We totally did.
About, you know what I mean? It's like, because we were going back and forth. Okay, where do we go next? What do we do next, right? And it's great to talk about, you know, all the, you know, the positive stuff like that. But, you know, where do we want to go? And your name came up. You know what I mean? What you're doing for all these people out there, and you're literally changing a lot of lives. And we're like, you know, that's the kind of road that we still need to stay on. You know what I mean? And bring in people who've actually done it, and you know, let, you know, them guys teach other people how to change, right? And how, not necessarily just talking all the fluff. You know, because, I mean, you walk the walk, and that's what we want to bring people on that walk the walk, and that's going to help impact others and change lives. And like you said, I mean, you definitely had a huge impact in what we're doing.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Right. So,
here's the flip.
Yeah, here's the flip. So I have a question for you. So, you know, everybody has that moment, right, where they like hear the whisper and like, this is the thing for me. So like, whose idea was this? Whose bright idea was this? Yours?
Yeah, we've told the story a few times on the podcast. I mean,
it was your bright idea, right?
Yeah,
Corey.
Yeah, it was my.
Yeah, and then you dragged your best friend into the wilderness with you, and Tony, you went skipping along.
You notice how Lacey and Tony are making eye contact.
Yeah, yeah.
the dragged friends.
Yeah,
he always wanted to do a podcast, and you can tell him the story about, you know, how the idea came about when you approached me to it, but there had to be more for me in order to do it. So I'll let Corey tell you the story. But
what was it for you, though?
What was
you can't
it for
just
you?
say that.
Yeah, you can't just say that.
No.
Yeah, but that's the end of the story.
That's a good setup. I mean, I wanted to do it. I wanted to do a podcast. I know I wanted to do it in the industry. Like again, and I swear to you, this is true. I left your class and I go, how can I impact the industry? How can I do what Jen's doing? How can we involve the entire industry, and how can we make a difference, right? And like I said, those words have all been said. So looking for my way out, and this is true because I went with my old boss who was a Summit Salon, and at our one-on-ones, I said, by 55, I will make an impact in this industry. I had no idea what that looked like. I had no idea how we were going to do it. But with podcast, I knew I always wanted to start a podcast. You know, like Gary Vee said, start a podcast. Joe Rogan said, start a podcast. Everybody says, start a podcast. But I'm like, what are we going to talk about? And I didn't quite know what that was going to look like. And how I could start a podcast and talk about the industry, because, you know, you can't teach 45 degrees. You can't teach blunt with words. You know, that's that live education thing that we've been talking about. But when I visited Philip Wolf came to town, and we've known Philip for, I don't know, 150 years or so. But we've known Philip since he was an assistant, so we knew him way before he was Philip Wolf, right? He was an assistant in our salon. So I went to visit him, and when I visited him, basically, I was his professional photographer all day. You know, people kept bumping me out of the way, giving me their cameras, like, take a picture with me. Just like that happened with you a couple minutes ago. I was your professional photographer for a minute.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome for that. So anyways, long story short, when I left that day, I go, this is what we need to talk about. You know, I knew Phil's story. I knew nobody knew Phil's story. And I knew that people would be interested in the people that do the hair, right? So with that, when I left, I go, this is our angle, and this is what we're going to do. And when I went to Tony to say it, I pitched it to him like, we're going to be Jimmy. We're going to be Jimmy Fallon. You know, we're going to share
Right,
this.
yeah.
And then and Tony said, that's great, but if we do this, we have to make a difference.
Right. You sound like Lacey and I. It's like this crazy balance of like, this is too crazy or this is just crazy enough. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's always this balance of like, should we go in or should we not go in? And I think it's really great in watching you guys and the teamwork that lives inside your friendship and now your business partnership. There's just this beautiful pass back and forth between the two of you. It's very organic. It's really unique. And, you know, Lacey and I are known for our teamwork. Like that's kind of like one of our things that we're known for because we don't have any ego or jealousy. And you guys have the same thing. Like there's never a struggle. That's always just this amazing pass back and forth.
But even if there's something that we don't agree on with each other, we can call each other out, and there's no hard feelings. It's not personal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I think it comes from the right intention, and I think that's the thing that sets your podcast apart from any other podcast is the intention that lived behind it before it was a podcast.
Yeah.
And so you talked a little bit about that your intention was to change the industry and to be a influencer.
Not about change. I mean, that's a change is a little bit like grandiose, right? And if I said change, I apologize. Just like how can we impact the industry in the right ways?
No, change is exactly the right word, Corey.
All right.
Like it's exactly the right word.
From you, I'll take it.
Yeah, because you want to know why? Because every time a beauty pro wakes up in the morning, whether it's a beauty school student, a teacher, a stylist, or a salon owner, and they choose to listen to this podcast on the way to work, you change their day. Every person who has a bad day after work can listen to your podcast and have a better day. So you're not just making an impact, you're changing people's lives. It's all about change. And our industry needs change. And we need people like you to inspire us to continue to change and evolve. You are not only making an impact, you're creating a movement that we have needed for a very, very long time. You may not have known that you were going to be a thing, but we've been waiting for the two of you for a really, really long time. So thank you for this podcast. Thank you for showing up, and thank you for inviting all of us to be better, because that's what you do.
I think I'm speechless for the first time ever.
Yeah.
Can I ask you another question?
To that.
What, you guys, so people ask us this all the time too, like, do you ever get nervous or like scared? Like when you hear you guys on the mic, you're like, hey, it's my best bud, Tony. Like everything's great, right? And there's like, people can't see what this looks like, but if you're in this room, there's like all these weird equipment things, like things I probably shouldn't touch, and like microphones and weird things. Like, do you ever get nervous? Do you ever feel like you don't know what to say? Or like, do you ever feel like, oh gosh, I don't know if we should have like, do you ever get scared? Be honest, do you?
I get anxious, right? It's not really scared or nervous, but there's times that I get anxious, and it's not so much like who we're talking to or who's sitting across from us, because I feel once we're on the mic, like we're all equal, we're all the same, you know. If you do listen to the first couple minutes that we did with Trevor Sorby, like I'll speak for me, and I'm sure Tony will nod his head, is like we were definitely having oh shit moments, right? Like this is our all-time icon in the industry, right? Because when we came out, we're about a half a generation. I think we're all about the same age. We came out about
Watch it.
Watch it.
We're a little older.
Right, but we were a half a generation past like the Vidal Sassoon thing, and our idol was Trevor Sorby. You know, we went. I never dressed hair in my life, but I would never miss an opportunity to watch Trevor do his thing, right? So when we got to talk to him, you know, he number one, right? Yeah. He's number one in our book. So if you listen to the first couple minutes of that, we were definitely having oh shit moments.
So what does that look like? Like, let's get specific. Like, because an oh shit moment for me is like bad hair color. Like I can't formulate, like it's ink pen blue. Like that's an oh shit moment for me. But in your world, in this world, what is that? Like, did the mic not work? Like, what was the oh shit?
No, just that was
because it was Trevor.
It was just Trevor, you know, because we were organizing our thoughts on where we wanted the conversation to go. It's Trevor.
Did you guys always have the paper with the questions on it? Like, have you always been like that organized?
Yeah, we have to be.
You do?
We have to.
Where's your paper today, homie?
Well, you're asking the questions. Where's your paper? And then the other time is that I remember being like anxious again is the first time we did when we talked to you guys the first time at Premiere Philly. And again, if you're listening to this, go back and listen to the first couple minutes of when we talked to Presley Poe. That was the first time we had met Presley, although we're dear friends now, but that was the first time that we had talked to Presley. It was our first live event. I knew going into that weekend that at the end of the weekend, we were make or break. Hey, because we knocked on the door and said, hey, hair industry, we're here. Because prior to that, we just did it out of a room. You know what I mean? So that was the first time that we had gone live. And our very, very first guest, first thing Saturday morning was Presley. And up to that point, Presley was, our biggest Instagram, influencer or Instagram person. And if you listen to the first couple minutes of there, it's clearly audible, at least from me, that that energy was there. You know what I mean?
I think the word anxious and anxiety is a word that we hear a lot in the industry. I think that people look at that's why I asked you if you were nervous, because I think people look at and probably listen to these podcasts and think that none of us are ever nervous because it sounds smooth and amazing. And they don't really realize that we're having oh shit moments the whole time. You just can't see it. But on the inside, we are freaking out.
Right. Like Jen physically gets sick every morning before she does this. And then I see her bouncing around. She's got her headphones on. She's getting her head right. And one day I was like, what are you doing? You're over there talking to yourself. And she's like, I'm telling myself this isn't about me. It's not about me. It's bigger than me. I'm here to give my gift. So if I'm thinking about myself and I'm nervous and it's all about me, I'm just being selfish. That's my ego. I need to shake it off. And then you see her shake it off. And then she's ready. So do you guys have a way to get your head right?
We quote Jen a lot.
All the time. Every time I get nervous, I quote Jen.
And it's really for the podcast itself, it might not be for everybody.
It's for somebody.
Exactly. And we use that all the time.
Go find your somebody.
Go find your somebody. Yeah.
I think the other thing that's really cool is the conversations with you guys don't just happen on the podcast. They happen off stage. When you have somebody on your podcast and we sit at the table with you, it's like we're family now. And so, there's lots of times, Corey, where you and I have FaceTimed each other and talked about things and shared kind of things that are bothering us or things goals that we're doing. So what's your next goal now?
I mean, we're premature kind of to talk about it, but we're working on a website, but it's not just a website for us; it's a website for you. It's a website for the industry. It's a website. What holes are in the industry, or what?
Look, our tagline is community-driven purpose, right? So when Hairdustry, when they, because Your Day Off podcast has given us, a little bit of a voice. So our next responsibility, what we want to do is we're going to create a community-driven website that's, it's easy for all of us to sit here and, talk to, the influencers, the icons and stuff like that. But, we want everybody in the industry to feel as important as anybody else in this industry. And so what we're doing is that we're going to try to build this community, and it's going to be for everybody.
You already have the community. You're just going to have the platform for us to all show up because we're all coming.
Right.
You already have the community, and the community that you have created is really magical because you guys are like me, where you're non-denominational. There's no hidden agenda. And you've bridged the gap between artists that work for different brands to where we've all we don't really care what brand we all work for now. We all realize that we're one team. And I think that that's something that you guys are doing that's really beautiful for all of us because, when we do live education and we're all together on the weekends, sometimes we end up becoming really good friends, right? And then other times we're weird. We're we don't want to sit at each other's table.
Right.
We're they're doing a debrief. Don't go over there.
Right.
What you guys have done though, by featuring all of us is you've already created a community of kindness and collaboration. And I think that's really amazing. So thank you for that.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Because that's from the very beginning, going back to the question of how this got started, we always wanted to blur the line in the sand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
I love that. I'm taking that. I'm totally taking that. That's going to be a thing. Blur the line in the sand.
So that way you don't have to choose what side to be on.
No,
Yeah.
there are no sides.
No.
I mean, the side should be us.
Yeah. There's
You know?
only one side.
That's
Yeah.
us.
It's us.
You know, and you know, from the artist and it needs to be about the people that are slaving behind the chair every day. That's what it's got to be, right? And we have to be in that together, and we can't. The days of pushing each other out should be over. You know.
Totally.
So.
Do you guys always get along?
Yeah, for the most part, we do. I mean, like Tony said, I mean, you know, we've been friends for a really long time. I mean,
Since high school.
Yeah,
Have you ever like fist fought, like
Oh my
had it out
God,
with each
stop
other?
it. Nobody's knocking each other's blocks
No,
off.
no,
Who
no.
says that?
No, never.
But really, have you guys ever had a moment where you
he's
don't
smarter
agree?
Than that.
yes.
Yes. But do you guys, do
I've
you
been
ever
witness to
have a
him.
time like that where you're seeing one perspective and the other one doesn't see it? Because Lacey and I have that sometimes where one of us sees the perspective so clearly, but the other one is like blind for a minute.
Oh,
Like,
we'll
how
say
do you work that
Yeah,
out?
well, we'll call each other out point blank, right? So if he feels like I'm coming across like, he's like, you don't need to come at me aggressive like that. Or if I think he's like overstepped some personal line with somebody, I'm like, I said, that's a little too personal. Or, you know what I mean? To me, if that was me, this is how I would have taken that. You know what I mean? So we don't have a problem,
Right.
calling each other out. Maybe if we were 20, years ago, or
Yeah,
back
that's
in our
different,
20s,
though,
Back
we
when
might
we
have
were
this, like-
punks.
right? You'd be like,
No, we're
what you
still
talking
punks.
about? Yeah, then we might, but we've been friends for so long. Our families are friends, and I know everything he says to me. There's no malice in it. There's no, he's not trying to hurt me. So
Yeah, same.
I can take.
Comes
What?
from
Okay, I
love.
got another question.
It does come from love.
What's the smartest thing Corey's ever said?
Let's start a podcast.
Right.
Okay, perfect. But you answered it, Danny.
answered
I
it,
wasn't
Danny.
asking you, smarty pants.
Right.
That's the
God,
smartest
that's
thing I've
very
ever
Jen
said.
of you.
No, actually, he said, "Hey, Tony, this is Brandy," which is my wife.
Aw,
He introduced me to my wife.
That's amazing.
that was smart.
What's the scariest thing he ever said to you? This is Brandy. No, I'm just kidding. She's gonna be your wife. Right. Love you, Brandy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The scariest thing? That I'm going into the Navy?
Wow. Right. What's the smartest thing Tony ever said?
Ironically, he introduced me to my wife.
Come on, you guys.
This is just crazy.
Lacey, you are not doing a good job.
I'm not.
Where is my husband?
I'm looking.
Like, clearly their friendship is on another level because
You
they're
guys are
both
making me look bad.
Yeah, way to go, Landau. No boyfriend for
Now
me.
you gotta help me.
All by myself.
Oh, bye. Oh, you do it.
Yeah,
It's
you
your
do
part.
it.
All by myself.
All right, knock it off.
Don't
When we
wanna
met,
be-
his mom didn't like me.
That's true.
She didn't. Lacey's mom didn't really like me either.
Right.
She was like, I don't really know how I feel about that. About
That's a
this.
bit much.
Yeah, she's too much. And then Lacey's boyfriend didn't really like me either.
Well,
Yeah,
I can see that.
Yeah, because
If I have to hear her name one
my
more
God.
time.
My best
Jen
friend
Planck, Jen Planck. And you know what he calls me now? He never just calls me Jen. It's
calls-
Jen Planck.
He calls you
It's-
Landau.
Yeah, no, he doesn't call me that. Or hey you sometimes. Yeah.
Even his
So-
sisters do. They call you Jen Plank.
Yeah, they do. So here's another question. So we travel every weekend, right, to all these live events, and if you do live education, you love it. Like you can't stop doing it. It's like a thing, right? But you're away from your family, and people ask all the time, like, how does that work for you? So I'm not married, so I have the freedom to like kind of come and go as I want. How do you guys keep, because you're both very, very in love with your wives, you're definitely soulmates, like it's a thing. And, watching you guys on social media and talking to you when you talk about your families and your children and your grandchildren, it's this like amazing. Is it ever hard for you guys to be on the road and leave your family at home? And if not, what are the things that you do to make it like stay tight like that? And what are the challenges that you've had and how did you overcome that? Like being on the road away from your families.
I think I'll go first, Tone. I think for us
Of course
to be
you
on of course. For us to be on the road is easy. Right. We get to hang out with you guys. We get to hang out with like-minded people. You know, that's the easy part. I think it's really difficult on the people that we leave behind. You know, because guess what? The grass still has to get cut. You haven't cut my grass in 2 years since I started the podcast. And by the way, it's one of my favorite things ever to do. You know what I mean? But because what I can't do for the family or what's on my honey-do list now falls on the family, you know, because we're out of town. And you know, we also work behind the chair 4 days a week. We also work behind the chair 4 days a week. So, you know, it's not, and by working 4 days a week, you know, we're also doing 10 plus hours per day. So there's no daylight left to get anything accomplished or to do anything. So, you know, I'm just unbelievably grateful to my wife and what she picks up. I mean, I don't tell her enough, but I should tell her more. But she has allowed me a very easy life. And I am like internally grateful for that forever. Like I watch and I see the stress of the family on her, and she keeps that from me so I can have a better life.
Wow.
Right? And like, how could I not honor her? You know, how could I'm out of words, but you know, that's just absolutely positively how I feel. And I felt that way. And not even since the podcast. I mean, that's been our life. And this is
forever.
Just now. So what have I done? I've thrown more shit on her when it comes to like doing the podcast. Right. But there's no way that I could fulfill any kind of dream or any kind of whatever without her. You know, she is my foundation. There's no doubt about it. And I swing in the wind like a flag just there.
That's amazing.
It's pretty good.
Tony.
For me, I try to I'm going to give you an example of like my son-in-law now, who I love and adore, and I look at him as a son. He came and asked for my daughter's hand in marriage, and when he came and asked me, I said, and these things that I try to live myself, especially the third one. He came and asked me if he could have my daughter's hand in marriage, and I said, you got to promise me 3 things. 1, try to love her as much as I love her. Protect her the way her dad will protect her. But the most important thing, and this is where I try to live too, is put her needs before your own, as should she do the same in order for this to last a lifetime. So when I'm home, you know, my main focus is you know, what can I do, how can I love her unconditionally? So when we are apart, we're not necessarily, there's no void. You know, she totally trusts me. She knows that my heart is with her, and vice versa. You know, and we're blessed. You know, my son's 18, he's in college, and my daughter's married, and you know, she's has a wonderful career. So we are so blessed, and we are so filled. You know what I mean? So eventually, hopefully, I'm hoping that one day she can come hang.
Oh my God, you guys should bring the wives, man.
Yeah, she came to Chicago with us.
She came to Chicago. They both came to Chicago with us a couple months ago.
So you know, there's no, there's nothing. You know, there's no void. It's not like, you know, we're missing out on something when I'm gone. You know?
Yeah, I think that we should probably send the wives some flowers or something, all of us, because for them
Some
to
spa days.
anything, because you know, the fact that they both allow you to do this, and like they actually gave the gift of you, because not everybody would allow their husbands to leave every weekend. Not everybody can handle that, throwing everything on them. And I think if you are somebody who participates in live education and you do have those people at home, when they allow us to fly like that, it's like the most precious gift you could ever give.
100%.
And so shout out to your families. So thank you, families, for giving us Corey and Tony and letting us borrow them on the weekends so that we can change lives. All right, let's get a little bit deeper, shall we?
Yeah, let's.
Has there ever been a moment in your career, Tony, where you doubted yourself, either as a stylist or as an educator, leader, or mentor? And what was the doubt that you had, and how did you overcome it?
Wow. There's actually 2 in particular. The first one is, of course, you know, as a young hairdresser, when you get out of school, you think you know everything. And so I worked for a buddy of mine. He graduated school and he opened up a shop. I was like, wow. So I went to work with him, and I had no clue what I was doing. I had literally I'm there maybe 2 weeks, and I had 2 women there at the same time that came back crying.
Oh no.
I'm like, oh my goodness. I literally, seriously doubted, is this for me? You know, but I knew that I needed more training, so I went and found that in a company called PR Partners, and I was with them for 20 years. I even built a cutting program for them, but by going there, I realized that it is for me. You know what I mean? But it was a moment there where I'm like, maybe I should be looking for something else, because it floored me. 1's bad enough, but 2 at the same time, can you imagine that?
Yeah, every week. No, stop. I'm just kidding.
Jen.
Right. So, all right. So being with them for 20 years. So after maybe about 12, 13 years being with them, 14 years, the whole dynamic of the company, I felt, kind of shifted a little bit. And I had an incident going to London. I was, where I had a real bad plane flight, and I was scared to fly. And so I stopped flying. Just because, when you have the kids and stuff like that, they were more important. And it hit me in a sense that, I didn't have a dad growing up, and I didn't want them to ever go through what I went through as a kid. So I was like, I won't fly. I'll make sure that won't happen. I won't, you know what I mean? So by me doing that, I withdrew myself from the company because they were flying all over the place, educating and stuff like that. And then I could just feel myself getting drifted and pushed aside.
Because you wouldn't fly.
Because I wouldn't fly. You know what I mean? So I was dying. You know what I mean? It's like inside, in the sense like that I knew I can't stay here, because, you know what I mean? It just felt like my old dog kind of get pushed aside, right? And I'm like, maybe it's just doubt start to creep in again. You know what I mean? And so what I did is, I'm kind of snapped myself out of it, and I'm going to take, my life in my own hands. And I'm like, I'm out of here. Peace. And when I went to a salon suite, and it just found the love and the passion and just the love of my community again. You know what I mean? But it's tricky, because you can get kind of sidetracked and caught in a little bit of a depression, like kind of work depression. I wasn't depressed, because my life was fantastic. You know what I mean? Especially my family life. But I was kind of a work depression, and it was just like.
I think a lot of people experience that work depression. Like when we're not busy, like our soul starts to be starved. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I think we were just talking about this, Lacey and I, yesterday, about how live education feeds the soul of educators. And so, like, if we don't have that, or we don't do it, even though the salon's amazing, even though our personal life is great, there's this empty work depression that happens when we don't get to be around each other. Does that make sense? Like
100%. And that's
craziness.
Because, when I developed that cutting program, I just love the education, right? I just love being able to give and just teach and just share. And then, when all that is kind of, not gone, but, you kind of get removed from. I wasn't even pushed out. It just somehow I just naturally drifted, because I couldn't keep up because I wouldn't travel, and it just totally you'll get into this depression funk, and it's if anybody going through that, and you feel that, you know what I mean, there is hope. You know what I mean. You got to find that passion. That's, you know what I mean. And if it's in your situation, you got to either talk to the people around you, you know what I mean, because not necessarily leaving is the answer, right? And if they're willing to help you and pull you, help, lift you out of this, that's great. But if not, then you might have to remove yourself from the situation. But for me, I had to remove myself.
So listening to you and like hearing your story, talk about not having a dad.
All right.
Because a lot of people don't know this about me, but I was adopted, so I don't know my mom. So, you know what I'm saying? So there's some of us walking around here that have a common thread
Yeah.
that we don't necessarily have a traditional commercialized family dynamic. And so when you said that and you kind of tried to skirt over it, I watched you like say, well, I don't know my dad, so back to this. So I mean, I think it's important that you share that because there might be somebody else listening right now that they're in a bad place. So can you talk about that a little bit? And I would like to ask you this. How is it that you don't have a dad, but you're one of the best dads?
Because I knew I didn't want my kids to go through what I went through.
What did you go through?
My dad split when I was 2, right? And we grew up in a very poor, well, I don't know if, my mom was on welfare, right? So, and like, I remember before school, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years old. I mean, we grew up poor. And like on Fridays, every other Friday or whatever, like AMP would have this, like, I guess they would discount all this meat, right? So I remember going up before school, we would walk up there, waiting, and all these other people online, and everybody running there, elbowing and trying to grab all this meat. And of course, I guess it's, either expired or just about to expire. And so my mom would freeze it. But, it just, this is before school, elementary school. And then we'd go to school, and it was just rough. I remember, we used to get picked on. And, me and my brother, we were minorities in our neighborhood. And, we would have to fight every day. And my uncle would make sure we would stand up for ourselves and make sure that, but literally we would fist fight every day. And it was just tough. And then it came to a point, I had an uncle that got shot in the head, and it's 4 young punks. So it was just time for us to get out of there. We left. But I knew what I didn't want my kids to go through. And so, but the funny thing is that even though we went through all that, it made me think a lot of things don't affect me. Right. So, like things can be chaos, but I can be kind of cool in it. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't scare me, right? I'm not afraid. But what I was afraid of is my kids not having me. And so I made sure I did everything I could do to be there for them, to make sure they had everything I didn't have. And make sure my dad split, I was making sure that my wife had the best husband in the world, So it's tough. But at the same time, it blessed me so much. You know what I mean? If I didn't go through that, I don't think I would have the life that I have now. There's so much love and so much stability. Even if I told my wife, even if we lost everything and her and I are still together, I'm good. I literally, I'm good. And so, so my dad passed away in 2008. So he went on first, I guess, a surgery. I haven't seen him since, I was like 5, 6 years old. He made a kind of pass by. But he was on, he went in for an operation. He got MRSA, and he was on his, he was dying. So he asked if he could see me, and I struggled.
Wait, when was this?
2008.
So as a child, you haven't seen him for how many years?
Wow, I haven't seen him since like 1975.
And then he just all of a sudden contacts you?
Yeah.
And says what?
And asked if I would come and visit
After he walked out?
Yeah.
And now he wants you to walk in.
Yeah.
So I bet that was a changing day in your life. Do I walk out or do I walk in? What made you walk in?
Well, I struggled with it, and my brother, he's like, what is it going to hurt? And after my brother kind of said that, I'm thinking, I can show my children, if I don't see him and he passes away, I'll live with that for the rest of my life. Or I can show my children what grace and mercy looks like. And so I said, guess what, guys? We're going to go visit him. And Told him, hey, look, there's no hard feelings. I forgive you for anything that you feel guilty of. I love you. And, you know what I mean? If you make it through this, you know, if you want a relationship, hey, I'm open for it. You know what I mean? But it was more to teach my kids, you know, what grace and mercy look like. So I forgave him. And he died maybe a week or 2 weeks later, and I have no guilt. I'm free inside. There's nothing to hold on to.
And so is he. And so,
Yeah.
you know, and the fact that you were able to go in, like you kept talking about like a gift for your kids, but really it was a gift for your dad. Cause like, you know, I don't know if I would ever do that. I don't know if my biological mother were to call me, if I would show up. And it has nothing to do with like what you just said. I just don't know if I could walk in, you know? So like, that's why I asked you that question, is because I feel like someday I may be faced
Right.
with a very similar circumstance, and I'm terrified of it. And
But if you say no, that's just another brick on your shoulder that you're going to have to carry.
no, and I feel that like when you said that, like it's going to be heavy if you carry it. I know it's going to be heavy, and I don't want to carry it, but I struggle with finding what I need inside to walk in. And I think that there's probably a lot of people that are listening to this right now and in different aspects of their life need to make the decision, do I walk in or do I walk out? And so if there's somebody listening right now, if you could give them a piece of advice that would give them the strength to walk in, what would you tell me?
I would tell you that even as if you carry that for the rest of your life, even if you never get to meet her, you got to forgive her. You got to let go of that anger, that hate, because it will consume you. It will grow. It will eat at you. It will carry on to other things in your life, and it will just eventually consume that area of your life in the sense of, of love. And so I would totally, even if you don't ever get a chance to meet her, you already need to forgive and embrace it.
Well, everyone's crying now, so there's that. Thank you for that.
Well, it's interesting that, Tony brought that up, and what came to my brain is actually what they say about jealousy, but it also has to do with like the act of not being able to forgive, because the act of not being able to forgive, you think that you're pushing it off on somebody else, but it's really just you, and you're eating it all the time. Yep. Like with jealousy, you can be jealous about whatever, but you're the only one that's affected by it, right? And this is kind of the same situation. No matter how long you hold on to that, it's only affecting you. It has no effect on anybody else but yourself. And by the way, it's the biggest killer in us, right?
It is.
It's the biggest killer in us. It's what we hold on to with our own insecurities. It's what we hold on to. Are we good enough? All those are stuck unless we can let go a little bit.
Definitely.
We have to let go.
Letting go is like a really hard thing for people, like letting go of control, letting go of fear, letting go of lots of things. You know what I mean? I think that's important.
Well, you opened this up. You opened us up with talking about change, right?
Yeah.
And change is not moving on to something new. Change is always letting go of something else.
Brilliant.
That's what change is. And you can, I guess you can't, but to move forward, you have to let go of something.
So what's
one
one
thing? Are
thing?
you ready to get rid of something so you can move forward?
What's one thing in your life, Corey, that you let go of that to allow you to grow?
So many things. Honestly, it's where you struggle, right? And it's what you struggle with. I mean, even close to Tony's story. Now, my dad was in my life, right? But we didn't have the greatest relationship. So once he got sick. Like this is the guy whose ass I wanted to kick when I was big enough to kick it, right? You know what I mean? Like I had that relationship with him. And then, which is weird because I'm much bigger than him, but I've always been scared of him as well, right? Even as an adult. Here's a story. So, you know, he would verbally attack me all the time and physically as well sometimes. But I don't want to get crazy about that story. But only the setup for this is that whenever he yelled at me for anything, I felt insignificant. I felt like a child. I felt like whatever. I had terrible OCD when I was a kid. I did the counting game. I did the pounding game. You know, you would just kind of do this. I kept my fingers crossed like this. This is uncomfortable for me to do right now because as a kid, this is how I was all the time. And I'd have this mantra in my head like, I hope he doesn't find out. I hope he doesn't find out. I hope he doesn't find out. Because finding out meant I was going to get punched in the face or get attacked verbally or whatever. So the second I moved out of the house, all that went away, right? And I didn't associate it with living in my parents' house as what was that kind of like driving force of that. It was just who I was, right? It was how I was broken because I did all these like crazy counting games and all this kind of stuff. So I move out of the house, all that stuff goes away almost immediately, which is weird to me, you know, and I'm 17, I think at the time, or 18 at the time when I moved out. So, from that moment on, I never felt like that little kid anymore, right? Like I'm having relationships with people and like, oh wow, they actually like me, and I'm not feeling like that little kid. A couple years ago, my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's 7.5 years ago. He just passed away last month, but 7.5 years ago he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and we're at Christmas at my sister's house. Like must have been like 4 or 5 years ago because he hasn't been verbal in a really long time. So when he was still verbal, he was there, and you know, he's kind of like, if you've ever like early onset Alzheimer's, like he's a little scattered and stuff, and like can't get his mind, you know, together, can't figure stuff out. So I grab his shoulder, and I'm like, "Come on, Dad, the kids are getting ready to open their presents," and he jumps in my face, and he's like, "Get the fuck out of my face," you know, like this, and like, which was really weird because immediately I felt like that kid I haven't felt like in 30 years. You know, immediately I felt like that insignificant little kid, and like where I was, and my wife was like, "Dude, are you okay?" And I go, "You don't understand. I haven't felt these feelings. They were like old friends. You know, they were old, terrible friends that were coming up again." And it was a real struggle. Now I was mature enough, or I was far enough to know to identify it as that. I go, "Listen, I haven't felt this way in a really long time," and he kind of brought me back to that. And this is everything that I hate about it. This is where my demons live, and I didn't like visiting them again, or I didn't like them visiting again, I should say. You know, so. So as far as letting go, like, I don't know if I'd ever let go of that. You know, I don't know if I can, but it's somewhere deep inside of me. I don't know how I got here, but we're here anyways. But
That's good.
But you know, my wife was great, like she always is, and she kind of understood where I was at that moment, and she understood that I identified it, but that doesn't mean that I can just forget about it either, right?
So who went to the military? Right, both of you, right?
No,
oh no, yeah, you got
did.
out. I forgot about this. So you go to the military, right? And Corey,
I have a funny story about that.
Which branch were you in?
Navy.
So you go to the Navy, right? And now you're like in the Navy, and you're like probably ripped because that's what happens. You leave like scrawny, and you come like. Bleh. So you come back. Now you're like in the Navy. You have this fierce like everything Navy.
Yep.
How's that feel when you come back and deal with Dad? Was he in the military also?
No, he wasn't in the military. Actually,
like, because the thing is like when you said like that you didn't want to talk about, just so you know,
he was a hairdresser.
The punch you in the face moment.
Yeah.
How do you not come back from the military and then clean his clock?
Because I mean, it's very simple. Because like, regardless of, he was my God. Right, he was the person that he was my role model. He was all that. Whether it's a good role model or not, there's still that. He's the one that stood above me. He's the one that was my everything. You know, he was the man I was raised to be. And if you want to talk about letting go, we can go there. He was the man I was meant to be. In that, I think that I'm probably too soft as a father in response to that. You know, like. I've never, and Tony can probably attest to this because he's been around for the whole thing, but I've never raised my voice at my daughter. Never. I've never have. And my thought about it is that when that's your instinct to raise your voice to somebody, then once that falls on deaf ears, it has no strength. And I always held back raising my voice, which is weird, but I've always held back raising my voice because if I'm going to do that, it has to be for a reason. It can't be because you didn't do your homework. It can't be because of that. It has to be, purposeful. Now, that being said, I can be stern with her. I can look her in the eye and go, was that the right thing to do? I can look her in the eye and go like, that was disappointing. I can do those things.
That's the worst thing. That's the worst thing when a dad says that was disappointing to a daughter. It's like,
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
oh my God, I just want to die. Like, because as a daughter, like your dad is like kind of this thing, it's like the first male that's ever loved you.
Yeah.
It's you know what I mean? There's like this thing. So
Like my daughter, if anybody talks bad about me, she gets
she'll
upset.
kill him. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, death. You're going to get it.
But it's funny because Corey and I mean, literally, when we met, you couldn't be more opposite, right? So, he grew up there, and we moved out of the
hood.
We lived in the suburbs. He lived in the hood.
Yeah,
so then,
you moved
then
out of
the
the
hood
hood.
joined
It's all
us.
good.
So, I mean, it was kind of country back then, like cow fields next to high school. I mean, it was definitely a culture shock for me, right? So, and he grew up there, and so we were completely opposites, and we worked next to each other. And then one day he said, "Hey, dude, can you give me a ride to work?" And I said, "Do it." And that's how this friendship developed. But I ask him. I look like a needle in a haystack inside the school. But being on the opposite, we were able to kind of like help each other, right? Kind of he, looking through at him, and I see a family life, and then he's looking at me, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't want to be that." So
that's not true.
so we can kind of help each other. But you know what I mean? I have nothing but mad respect for Corey.
Same, brother.
I admire him. I love him. He is definitely he has the biggest heart in a human being that you're going to meet.
So I'm pretty sure that's probably your favorite thing about Corey. It's probably his heart. Yeah. What would be your favorite thing about Corey?
I just know no matter where I'm at in my life, I know I can depend on him.
What's your favorite thing about Tony?
I mean, that's definitely it.
What's your favorite thing about Tony's personality?
Tony's personality. And I think what Tony was saying is why we've gotten along is because we are opposites. Like I approach everything heart first. Tony approaches things head first. And I think that kind of like it kind of gives us that even out. It kind of evens us out. I think. And I think even like if you look at like even people that are married and stuff, they're usually married to the opposite of what they are because we only push forward by being full, right? And I think and to quote Jerry Maguire, Tony kind of completes me, and I hope that I can complete him as well. So when we need to have when we have to have a relationship or a conversation with Jen from the heart, that's going to come from me. Well, if we ever have to have a head first conversation, that's coming from Tony.
That's awesome. What do you think is the greatest gift that Corey has given to you?
His friendship.
What's the greatest gift that Tony's ever given you?
I mean, that's easy too. I mean, it's the friendship. It is that complete thing. I'll tell you what else Tony gave me, and that's Tony gave me his family. And like when I said that I moved out of my parents' house, I moved into his house. I moved in with his mom, and there was lots of us, Judy, his mom, she's always had an open door policy to everybody. You guys could move in, like she always had that open door policy, and it was always a safe space because I was leaving a space that I didn't feel comfortable in, I didn't feel safe in, and then and Judy once again had open door policy, and there was you wouldn't believe the amount of people that have been in our life running through that door because she was that mom that took in the misfits, right? But through that, and this is such a weird kind of thing, and it's kind of hard to even explain, but Tony's cousins are my cousins. Like he has cousins now that are 30 years old that I've known since they were 2. There's people in our lives that I've known, again, that are cousins that I've known my whole life. And not only that, my daughter is best friends with Tony's cousin.
Oh, come on. That's amazing.
Right?
True story.
That's amazing.
Right? Like my daughter goes to his cousin without telling me, without telling him. They're just buddies. And her family's that way. And Tony's family is the most loving family I've ever been in my life. And it's just so true. It's if you guys were to come and hang out, you would be a part of that family.
That's awesome.
When are we doing that?
Yeah, when are we coming?
Should.
Yeah, you should.
Tell Judy.
All right.
Tell Judy.
Tell Judy we coming. Got 2 new Boo Bears coming,
All right.
Judy.
Awesome. So love it.
So
She'll
hold on,
have
I'm
dinner
not
ready.
done yet, you little punks. So here's the other thing. I have a question for you.
This has to be the last one because you're doing stage.
Knock it off. I'm too into this. I want to do this for a while. What is your greatest hope for our industry?
My greatest hope for this industry is that everybody's intention is the best for everybody and not for themselves.
Corey, what is your hope for this industry?
Unity of us that do it, unity of us that we can respect each other's work, the unity of us that we can respect each other's shoes, like, and not the physical shoes, but that we can respect that somebody,
Everybody's got to walk.
experience, everybody's got to walk, and I hope to get over the days of the criticism, of the side looks, of the side eyes, and I think we're never going to get out of that completely because most of that is human experience. But how can we empower the industry so we're not living in that insecurity in which we have to feel like we have to side eye, and how can we get through that?
Yeah,
So my hope is for that.
And if you're listening to this, and if you're one of these people that if you see something on Instagram and you don't like it, don't comment. Why tear someone else down and who has the courage to put themselves out there, right?
That's it.
I think that's going to be a thing, and I think you're going to see more of us aligning to that behavior. Like,
Well, we
like
started a hashtag called #Unfollow Negativity. You know what I mean? So if anybody that it's constantly negative, unfollow them. So
How about #shut it?
Shut up.
Yeah,
It's just-
that's
I mean,
crazy.
if you're following someone and it's not giving you those who's that Japanese lady that does the consolidations?
Oh my God, that's the most amazing thing. I want her to come to my house.
know,
I'll
right?
have like a cracker left.
Right. But if it doesn't feel good, get rid of it.
Right.
Right. Throw it out. Throw it out. And we don't have to, put ourselves. And listen, I live in the fake world of like, I just want the Jen Planks of the world. I just want the people
Me
that
too.
make me feel awesome. The other people I don't need to make room for. I want to feel awesome. I'm 50 years old. I've felt like shit long enough. Damn it.
Right. So
Corey just banged his head on the
right,
table.
stop it. So Corey,
Yeah.
you talked about having a little bit of OCD,
Yeah.
a little bit of anxiety,
Yeah.
but sitting across the table from you, you are calm and cool as a cucumber. Can you give a little piece of advice to anybody else that maybe struggles with a little bit of OCD, a little bit of anxiety? What's one of the tools that you have implemented in your life to help you grow through that?
Well, again, the OCD, aside from like weird food stuff that I had at one point, aside from that, it just kind of went away, with the food things. I told myself that this is ridiculous, right? But the funny thing about it is this is ridiculous. You also are like, it's ridiculous, but I don't want to touch it, right? So, I mean, I've kind of had to coach my way through that. This is not real. This is not whatever. And I've done pretty good with that. Most of my OCD was like the counting stuff and the finger crossing.
Yeah, but when did you learn to uncross your fingers? Like, what was it?
Dude, I'm telling you, when I left my parents' house, it all went away. All that anxiety was like having to deal with my dad.
That's really saying when he got to my house.
Yeah,
Right,
pretty much.
stop it. Judy.
Judy hooked me up.
Oh my God.
I don't know if she listens to the podcast, but this is the big shout out to Judy a billion times.
She does have it downloaded.
There you go.
What's your favorite thing about your friendship?
Our friendship?
Yeah.
Just how real it is, how deep it is, how it's not a friendship, it's a brotherhood, and not in kind of like a military or a biker kind of way. I mean, that's my brother, man. And that's my do or die. And here's what when we're kids, clearly I was the one with the mouth. So I with that, I always had someone to back my mouth up. But it wasn't me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, that just forever, grateful.
Yeah, I know
for that.
exactly
Look
what
at his
I know exactly what you mean by you always have somebody to back your mouth up, because
Yeah.
Lacey backs my mouth up all the time.
What is it? She's half your size.
Well, not really.
Hey, when she has to back you up, do you have to unfold her out of your pocket?
Maybe. Maybe. I do want to say this to both of you. I see our friendship so much in your friendship. And although it's been really wonderful to talk about the industry and icons and things like that, I think that there's probably a lot of people out there that have really good friends. And I think that this podcast and this conversations that we've just had are going to make people look at their friends a little bit differently. And I think that there'll be a lot of courageous conversations that are really beautiful because you've shared your friendship with all of us. And so I think that that has been probably one of the most inspiring things about being around the two of you, is that you make me want to be a better friend to Lacey.
Well, you know, when we open up the podcast, when he says my best bud, he means it.
Yeah, for sure, you guys. Thank you so much for having us. You have no idea how fun it was to sit across the table from you and allow your fans, thousands of them, thousands and thousands of your fans, to get a little peek inside your hearts and your minds. And I think that we should probably do this again sometime, because I have a feeling in the next 36 months or so,
we could do it again.
You guys are going to have some really big news for all of us. So thank you so much for
Thanks, Jen. Thanks for having
being
us.
icons, and for allowing us to interview you, and for sharing your challenges, your tips, and your friendship with all of us. So from the entire professional beauty industry, thank you so much, Corey. Thank you so much, Tony. We love you so much.
Thank you so much. And you know, just to kind of bring this full circle, like we found our somebodies, right? This is a table full of somebodies. And we thank you. And, you know, thank you for having us on our podcast, or whatever.
I got best day ever, you guys. This was the best. Enjoy your day off with Tony and Corey.
Hey, so there it is. Hey, this is a message that we've been trying to bring, I don't know, for the last couple months, actually since we started the podcast. Hey, so if you like the podcast, or if you find that it's useful, please leave us a review, a 5-star review on iTunes. Leave us a rating and a review.
But if you don't like it, forget about it.
Yeah, totally forget about this message. We also want to thank Sarah and Blaine from Pretty Gritty. Sarah and Blaine, they are a band out of Portland, Oregon, and we just want to thank them very much for allowing us to use their song, Pleased to Meet You, on our podcast. That's cool. I think you can find, actually you can find their music on iTunes.
Peace and hair grease.